me share my screen. Should we go ahead and get started, Prabhu? 701.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yattejasa Nipashirongram Ahanmakhatham Ayum Jastavagajayuta Sattva Viryaha Tenartha Pramathanatha Makhaya Bhupa Yanmochitastad Anayan Balim Adharete. Yat, whose, Tejasa, by influence, Nipashira Angham, one whose feet are adored by the heads of kings, Ahan, killed, Makha, Artham, for the sacrifice, Arya, respectable, Anuja, younger brother, Tava, your, Gaja Ayuta, 10,000 elephants, Sattva Virya, powerful existence, Tena, by him, Artha, Ahartha, collected, Pramatha, Natha, the Lord of the ghosts, Mahabhairava, Makhaya, for sacrifice, Bhupa, kings, Yatmochita, by whom they were released, Tat Anayan, all of them brought, Balim, taxes, Adhare, presented, Te, your. So this is the text and translation from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 9. Translation. Your respectable younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandha, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandha's Mahabhairava Yajna, but they were thus released, and later they paid tribute to your majesty. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jarasandha was a very powerful king of Magadha, and the history of his birth and activities is also very interesting. His father, King Brihadratha, was also a very prosperous and powerful king of Magadha, but he had no son. Although he married two daughters of King Kasi, but being disappointed in not getting a son from either of the two queens, the king, along with his wives, left home to live in the forest for austerities. But in the forest, he was benedicted by one great rishi to have a son, and he gave him one mango to be eaten by the queens. The queens did so, and were very soon pregnant. The king was very happy to see the queens bearing children, but when the ripe time approached, the queens delivered one child in two parts, one from each of the queens' wombs. The two parts were thrown in the forest where a great she-demon used to live, and she was glad to have some delicate flesh and blood from the newly born child. Out of curiosity, she joined the two parts, and the child became complete and regained life. The she-demon was known as Jara. And being compassionate on the childless king, she went to the king and presented him with the nice child. The king was very pleased with the she-demon and wanted to reward her according to her desire. The she-demon expressed a desire that the child be named after her, and thus the child was surnamed Jarasandha, or one who was joined by Jara, the she-demon. In fact, this Jarasandha was born as one of the parts and parcels of the demon Viprachitti, the saint by whose benedictions the queens bore the child was called Chandra Kaushika, who foretold of the child before his father Brihadrata. Since Jarasandha possessed demoniac qualities from birth, naturally he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, the lord of all ghostly and demoniac men. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva, and so also Jarasandha. He used to sacrifice all the arrested kings before Lord Mahabhairava Shiva, and by his military power, he defeated many small kings and arrested them to butcher before Mahabhairava. There are many devotees of Lord Mahabhairava or Kalabhairava in the province of Bihar, formerly called Magadha. Jarasandha was a relative of Kamsa, the maternal uncle of Krishna, and therefore, after Kamsa's death, King Jarasandha became a great enemy of Krishna. And there were many fights between Jarasandha and Krishna. Lord Krishna wanted to kill him, but he also wanted that those who served as military men for Jarasandha might not be killed. Therefore, a plan was adopted to kill him. Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna together went to Jarasandha in the dress of poor Brahmanas and begged charity from King Jarasandha. Jarasandha never refused charity to any Brahmana, and he performed many sacrifices also. Yet he was not on a par with devotional service. Lord Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna asked Jarasandha for the facility of fighting him, and it was settled that Jarasandha would fight with Bhima only. So all of them were both guests and combatants of Jarasandha, and Bhima and Jarasandha fought every day for several days. Bhima became disappointed, but Krishna gave him hints about Jarasandha being joined together as an infant. And thus, Bhima dissected him again and so killed him. All the kings who were detained in the concentration camp to be killed before Mahabhairava were thus released by Bhima. Feeling thus obliged to the Pandavas, they paid tribute to King Yudhishthira. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhisham Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Datati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, good morning everybody. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining this wonderful Sunday morning. And it's going to be a nice day, I'm sure, with the summer coming in. A lot of flowers blooming, a lot of your gardens are filling up and blossoming, and your lawns are getting greener. A lot of work to be done in terms of maintaining them, but at the same time, there is a lot of beauty and a lot of flowers that can be offered to Krishna during your arati and so on. So it's a beautiful time. And so today's topic is a continuation of where we are, where Yudhishthira Maharaj is seeing all of these various omens, and he's so distressed, seeing all of this and seeing everything that is happening around him, to the point that he's been asking for questions but not getting any answers. And he's not worried for himself. It's more so, his genuine care and affection and concern for the people, his subjects, and humanity in general, that he's worried about, concerned about. But most importantly, he is very concerned that it may be the last that he may have seen of his dear cousin and friend, Lord Krishna. So this is where, and he had sent Arjuna to find out and inquire, to find out how his relatives, how his kith and kin were doing in Dwaraka, and if the Lord was fine. And, it's been 7 months. It's been 7 long months. Not a word, not a squeak coming back from Arjuna. In fact,
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhu, I cannot hear the speaker.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I
Oh,
cannot
okay.
hear
Okay,
Sri
maybe Prabhu.
Vallabha Prabhu. I
Yeah,
cannot hear
Prabhu is
Sri Vallabha.
joining back again. Joining back.
Hare Krishna, I'm so sorry. My signal dropped for some strange reason. I'm back. I hope you can all hear me.
Sure, Prabhu. Now we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Let me share my screen once more. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, Prabhu, we can see now.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, like I was saying, while I was making a little light of it, the situation was actually getting very, very, very dire. The omens that Yudhishthira Maharaj was seeing was not only being seen by Yudhishthira Maharaj, but everybody was seeing it, everyone around him, and everything was getting darker and darker by the day. So it was only natural for Yudhishthira Maharaj, being the emperor of the world and being the compassionate individual that he was, the wonderful devotee that he was, it was his genuine concern for humanity at large, and more so and more importantly for his dear friend and cousin and his supreme master, Lord Krishna, right? Whether he was still there, if he had ended his pastimes, so these things were going through his mind, but he was always asking the same question to several different people around him, hoping that he would get a different answer, hoping that they would tell him, everything is fine and everything is going to get better. But it was actually going from bad to worse. The situation was so bad. I mean, all the moments that we, heard about in chapter 14, where there were she jackals that were crying out at the sun and vomiting fire. There were, calves were not drinking milk from their mothers. People were fighting, cheating. It was like, everything that could go wrong was going wrong. There was gusts of wind that were violent. They were not just ordinary winds. The clouds were getting darker by the day, so it was very, very gloomy and very scary, very terrifying. So people were in a state of chaos, and obviously things were not stark contrast to how things were prior to all of this happening, right? Everything was blossoming, everything was blooming, everything was beautiful, everything was peaceful. People were at peace with each other, right? So things were very different. So in the meanwhile, Yudhishthira Maharaj had also sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to find out what was going on, to inquire about the health of his relatives, of his kith and kin. 7 months had gone by. Like I was saying, I left you at that point where my internet connection was lost. But we're at a point now that Arjuna has actually returned after 7 long months. So you can imagine Yudhishthira Maharaj's mixed feelings. I mean, he was so happy to see that his brother had returned safely. and that he would have news, but at the same time, he was also in a lot of grief that, things may not be the same. Looking at Arjuna's body language, he was looking very down and dejected, and he was literally choking, even to get words out of his mouth. It was like, where do I start? So this is the juncture that we are at, where Arjuna is beginning to speak. By now, Maharaj Yudhishthira has bombarded him with a lot of questions. How is so and 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 so? How is Lord Krishna? How is my dear friend? How are my friends, my relatives? And all these questions that we heard in chapter 14. And now in chapter 15, Arjuna is beginning to speak and respond, and he's trying to compose himself, without completely breaking down. But by now, he's completely devastated, and Yudhishthira is adding to Yudhishthira Maharaj's anxiety. Now, we also need to keep in mind that chapter 15 is an important link between what happened in the most recent past and what is about to happen, which is what led up to, all of this happening, and how Maharaj Parikshit was enthroned. He's a great grandson of Yudhishthira Maharaj and the Pandavas, right, of Arjuna. And so how he was, put on the throne, and how he became the emperor of Bharatvarsh. So this kind of connects the two. And Arjuna is now recounting all the good things that Lord Krishna has done for them, and how he's been the ultimate protector for them. So he's going through that, and then slowly, breaking the news that Lord Krishna is no longer with them, and that he's ended his time in the material world. And so it was a sign, that's why all of these signs are showing up. So yeah, so now let's, in the course of this, discussion that he's having with his elder brother, he's, like I said, recounting all of the various things that Krishna did to help them, to protect them. And this particular verse, he's talking about how Bhima, he even protected Bhima, right? And how he gave him the strength to be able to take care of Jarasandha. And Jarasandha was no ordinary person, and we'll get to that a little later. But he was a king that was very inimical of Krishna. And he was a complete supporter of Kamsa and the Kauravas in many ways, right? So he was anything to do with the Pandavas, anything to do with Krishna, or anyone to do with Krishna, for instance, being on his side, were natural enemies to Jarasandha as well. And Jarasandha was a pretty evil kind of a person, obviously, being on Kamsa's side and knowing, reading the purport based on what we just heard. It just gives us a kind of an idea in terms of who Jarasandha was. But he was a very austere person, but a very evil-minded person. He was not a devotional kind of a person as well. Okay, so we'll get to that later. But first, let's talk about Bhima, right? Who is Bhima? Interesting facts here that, Bhima was, first of all, he was, the second eldest son of Pandu and Kunti Devi. And Kunti Devi, through her benedictions that she received, she was able to, have Bhima as a son through Vayu himself. So while the Pandavas were in exile, they were briefly in Bhadrakashrama. Okay, so this is when they all recognized that the war was going to happen, and they would need to have, they would need to face some immense odds. And this is when, Yudhishthira Maharaj requested Arjuna that he should go and request the demigods in turn to be able to receive all of the weapons that were required to be able to fight this formidable force that the Kauravas were going to muster. So which meant Arjuna was being actually sent. These were not any ordinary weapons that you could see in any factory out here, in the material world. And obviously, these were special times where, Arjuna was requested to get these special weapons from Lord Indra himself. So through special prayers, Arjuna was sent to the heavens to actually meet with Lord Indra, who was also his father, to be able to request him and get some of the celestial weapons that were absolutely required in order to defeat the Kauravas. Okay, so while that was happening, the Pandavas were still in exile. They were in Badrikashrama for a short period of time before they moved on to their much more stable ashram at that point in time, which was Kamyaka. Okay, so one day it so happened that the breeze from the northeasterly direction dropped a lotus right by the feet of Draupadi. And this was not an ordinary flower. This was like a 1,000-petaled golden lotus. Okay, and it was so fragrant. It was unlike anything that she had ever seen. She was so much in rapture when she was she was so captivated just looking at this beautiful flower that she felt we should definitely have this lotus in my garden, okay, in Kamyaka. And like when we drive through some of our neighborhoods, we see these beautiful flowers and beautiful landscaping that is being done. We think these are so beautiful, but it'd be so nice if we can even have them in our yards, and if we can offer them to our deities when we're doing arati, for instance. So these things run through our minds, right? Similarly and exponentially, Draupadi also was thinking the same way. And this was no ordinary flower. When we look at these beautiful roses that we see these days, there are so many different colors, so many different hybrids. There are so many different types of fragrances and sizes, right? They're so beautiful. Now, what to speak of a 1,000-petaled lotus that is golden in color? I mean, this is like, we can't even imagine. In fact, we can just say it, but if you try to think about it and visualize it, it's hard to understand. And plus the fragrance, that's beyond our capacities in terms of being able to comprehend what that really meant. So Draupadi was so in love with that lotus that she requested Bhima and said, Bhima, can you find out what the source of this beautiful flower is? And can you find out if you can, and try and bring as many as you can once you find out where the source is, so that we can, grow some of these in our ashram in Kamyaka. Now, Bhima, being the strong Kshatriya, he was so happy, and not only the Kshatriya, but also being Draupadi's husband, he felt like, I'm getting this, this direction from my dear wife. And he was very thoughtful. He was very thoughtful in the sense he recognized that, in the circumstances that they were in, Draupadi was a princess. She didn't have to be there. And she was going through such severe austerities, right? She had gone through, living in the forest, being in exile, practically sleeping on the bare ground, on the floor, and eating a few herbs, fruits. There was nothing royal about it. There was nothing very luxurious about it. It was in fact on the other end of the spectrum, right, where they had to live through such harsh realities, such harsh conditions in the forests. And not just that, prior to that, she had borne such severe insults. There was so much humiliation. She was even, there was even an attempt to disrobe her, right, in the assembly of all these lustful men around her. So you can just imagine what she had gone through, and she was still continuing to go through. So when this came to Bhima as a request from his dear wife, he was like, I have to do this. I will do this. I need to find out where this 1,000-petal lotus is or can be found, so that I can bring it from my dear wife. So off he was, off he went in terms of looking for this lotus. And like I said, the breeze was blowing from the northeasterly direction, so it was only logical for Bhima to go against the wind. So he headed out in the northeasterly direction. And he moved so fast, so rapidly, because he didn't want to waste any time. He wanted to go there and get this flower and say, look, my dear Draupadi, my dear wife, here it is. This is the 1,000-petaled lotus that you had asked me to bring you, and here it is. So he wanted to be able to do that. And he was happy that he was being asked this, because Arjuna was definitely Draupadi's favorite. But Arjuna was not there, right? He had gone to meet with Lord Indra. And of course, this is coming directly and specifically to Bhima. So, it was definitely something to be feel proud of, and and Bhima felt like, this was his turn to actually do something for Draupadi. So his intent was very, very pure. It was, let me do something for my dear wife who's going through so much. So he was heading with such pace that literally even animals and birds were literally fleeing, to get out of his way. They were actually running away, getting out of his way as fast as they could, because this is Bhima. He's huge. And he is moving with such pace that, if they get in his way, they're going to be crushed, right? So this was happening, and he was going in that direction. And then he climbed up a mountain. And there on that mountain, he was completely taken aback by the sight that he saw. There was a beautiful, beautiful set of gardens with flowers and lovely fragrances. I mean, it was just a very beautiful sight. And even the rocks, we're told, had gems in them. So it was such a beautiful place. It was most likely, closer to the heavenly planets than we can imagine. But then, looking through all of those those gardens, he was unable to find the 1,000-petaled lotus. So he said, okay, this is not the place. I should continue. So he continued. He was going down that path where he could find the lotus. And in the bargain, he went through several forests and, came to several lakes, and climbed several mountains, and he kept going and kept going. And in fact, he was going so fast. By now, he was literally, trying to increase his speed and accelerate. He started out with a very heavy pace to begin with. And now he was literally, throwing whatever was coming in his way, right? So, and some of the animals, being beasts that they are, obviously, that's there in their psyche, right? So they charged at him, or they would charge at him, and he would just slap them and get them out of their way, out of his way, So he was, being Bhima that he was. And he even tossed elephants, for that matter. He would, pick up these elephants, and if they were in their way, he would throw one elephant against another. And, so he was just so fixed in what he had to do, his purpose, his mission. It was not a mission impossible, but it was a mission that he wanted to make happen at any cost. So he was going about this way until at one point he heard a loud noise, a very loud noise. I mean, this was an unnatural kind of a noise. So he was very curious. I mean, it caught his attention, and he was like, where is this noise coming from? So he, headed towards the source of that noise, and couldn't find anything but a large monkey. It was a huge monkey that was lying along the path. So he was thinking, who's this, what is this monkey, first of all, and he's been, like I said, he was just flipping and throwing animals left, right, and center, and anything for that matter that came in his way. So seeing this large monkey, he just roared to scare it away. And he expanded his chest, and he was about to literally lift this monkey and throw it out of his sight. The monkey was like, didn't pay much attention. Basically, was hardly impressed. So the monkey just looked at him and said, who are you? Now, why are you waking me up? I was taking my nap. I'm getting old, and I'm not feeling too well. Why are you disturbing me? And don't you know that why are you roaring at me and you're charging at me as though you want to kill me? Don't you know that you're a human being, and your duty is to protect lower animals? So Bhima was taken aback, and he was like, whoa, wait a second. Normally, animals and beasts are very scared of me and they're all fleeing and running away, getting out of my way. This monkey seems to be very insolent, very lazy, and doesn't seem to be impressed at all with my strength and who I am. So then Bhima went off and was saying, "Hey, monkey, do you know who I am? I am the son of Pandu. I am the son of Kunti Devi, sired by Vayu himself. I am of the royal order." And so he, introduces himself with all the pomp and glory that Bhima would. You can just imagine that, right? And he goes on, and then he asks the monkey, "Who are you?" And the monkey just, still not impressed at all. He just looks away and he says, "I'm just a monkey. So just turn around, go back from where you came from. Yeah, you're not welcome here, or you're not supposed to be here. So just go back." So at this point, Bhima gets very, very angry. The Kshatriya spirit comes out and he's like, "Oh, who is this? Why do I need to get permission from you?" And so he's still very, very angered. And so finally the monkey says, "Okay, if you really, really want to go, okay, first help me, get me out of the way. I'm old. I'm not too well. And for starters, you can move my tail, which is also in the way. I'm not able to move even my tail. Can you please move my tail and then get me out of the way? Then you can head, and wherever you want to go, you can go down this path." So Bhima is like, just a tail and, to start with, and then just this monkey, no issue. So he goes and he tries to yank the monkey's tail, but the tail is not moving. Okay. So Bhima tries a little harder and it's still not moving. And he tries even harder and it's not even budging an inch. He tries harder and harder and harder, and nothing's happening. And the monkey is not even, is still lying around like nothing is happening. So at this point, he realizes and recognizes this is no ordinary monkey. Okay. And that's when Bhima pays his, obeisances to him. By now he's thinking, maybe, this could be someone very, very special. So he asks him, "Who are you?" And that's when the monkey tells him who he is. And he says, "See, I'm the son of Vayu too. And I'm Hanuman. I'm the one who served Lord Ram and continues to serve Lord Ram and, helped Lord Ram during, the times when Sita was kidnapped, and, recounts that entire episode to Bhima. And, by the, Bhima is in complete rapt attention by now, because for one thing, he's meeting his brother, right? Because being the son of Vayu, he becomes his brother, right? By relationship. And then he's meeting Hanuman himself. And Hanuman was a legend, even to the Pandavas. And this is, right, the Pandavas are close to, they're in the Treta Yuga and, Dwapar Yuga and close to Kali Yuga, right? So this had happened, Ramayana had happened, the whole episode had happened in the Satya Yuga. So this was phenomenal for Bhima to be in the presence of Hanuman, his idol, so to speak. So he was in complete rapt attention. So he was firing away questions. So how did this happen? How did that happen? And Hanuman was, letting him know this happened. That's what, Lord Ram did. This is what I did. This is what, all the various details that he was sharing with him. And at one point, Bhima said, "Okay, so Hanuman, you were so powerful, so powerful. Why didn't you just go kill Ravana, just, crush him and bring Sita back to Lord Ram? You could have ended everything there, right? So why did you do that?" So Hanuman smiled at him and said, "Look, that was not my duty. That was, my duty was only to find out where Sita was, and my duty was to, really cross the 100 yojanas that I had to cross to be able to get to Sri Lanka. To Lanka at that point was just that. But the actual glory that Lord Ram was able to establish by actually going and fighting this powerful demon king, this Ashura, this Ravana, was basically establishing the fact that Lord Ram is invincible, in all of humanity, right? For generations to come. So finally, Bhima said, okay, can you please show me your form as Hanuman? Because Hanuman was, still as an old monkey that was still lying on the path that Bhima was trying to cross. So Hanuman said, no, that's not going to happen. So this conversation went on for some time. And Bhima was like, please, brother, show me your form. I want to see your form as Hanuman, in your true form. And again, Hanuman kept refusing. So this went on for some more time. And then finally, Bhima said, look, I am not going to move. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not even going to go back. I'm going to stay right here. If you don't show me your form, I'm not going to move. So Hanuman finally gave in, and he started to show his, display his original form. And as he showed his form, he was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. At one point, he was towering over Bhima. Bhima himself is huge. And here was Hanuman that was towering over Bhima. The description that's given is, he was towering over Bhima. And then he stopped at that point. He said, look, I could go on and on and on and on and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But then, Bhima, you're not going to be able to see me anymore. I'm going to be above the clouds, and, you're not going to be able to see me at all. So then he came back to, a form that, a size that Bhima could relate to and see. And then finally, Hanuman gives Bhima a big hug, a brotherly hug. And he says, okay, you ask me anything that you want. Ask me anything that you want. In fact, I know, you're on a mission, and there is this battle that's going to happen. I can just go crush all of the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra. I can kill Duryodhana just like that. I can finish it off. Just tell me if that's what you want me to do. I'll do it for you. And Bhima says, no, please don't do that. All I need are blessings from you, right? I just need blessings from you, and that's all I need to be able to get to where I need to be and help my brothers win this war. And by the way, if I can feel your presence during the battle which is about to happen, that would be my greatest honor. So Hanuman tells him, not only will I be with you, but when you go forward with, roaring to fight, right? I am going to add to your roars, Bhima. I'm going to add to your roars to a point that it's going to strike fear in people's hearts who are on the battlefield. And I will remain on the flagstaff of Arjuna's chariot. So that way you are completely protected. I'm there with you, and we will fight together. So that's why, on Arjuna's flagstaff, we see Hanuman there, right? So it's such an interesting thing, just, trying to imagine what that conversation would have been between these two great legends, right? Two great warriors and two great personalities. So then after that, Hanuman tells Bhima, okay, here's where we are going to find this beautiful 1,000-petaled lotus. It's in the gardens of Saugandhika. Saugandhika is a place, these are gardens that actually belong to Kuvera, Lord Kuvera. And they're very, very opulent, very beautiful gardens, very well maintained, and not just maintained, but beware, Bhima, there are also going to be a lot of Rakshasas and Yakshas that are going to be protecting, that will be protecting these gardens. And this garden, this specific garden is, the Saugandhika garden, which is where you're going to find the 1,000-petal lotus in a lake right in the middle of it. So he tells Bhima, this is the path, this is how you need to go. So then Bhima thanks him, and he's so happy, and again, with tears in his eyes that he has to leave his brother, but at the same time happy that he was able to get personal darshan of Hanuman, his idol, his total, and his brother. So he then moves on, and as he continues, he's again crossing several forests. He's crossing, he's climbing mountains, and he's going through so many different vast areas again, at a fantastic pace. And then finally, he, just to make the story short, he arrives at the Saugandhika garden. At this garden, he sees things that he's never seen before, right? I mean, he's seen some beautiful sights along the way, but this was a sight that was even beyond all of that, right? It was just beyond compare. Again, there were, beautiful flowers, fragrant flowers. There were birds of all kinds. It was such a beautiful scene that, there were apsaras, there were gandharvas, that were singing and dancing. And it was such a beautiful sight. He was completely lost and completely taken aback. And then as he looked, he saw the lake right in the middle. And this was a beautiful lake with swans in them. And, it was just, the scenery was so beautiful that he was completely engrossed and taken aback, with the beauty of that. And there in the middle of the lake, he saw so many of these 1,000-petaled golden lotuses. So he wasted no time. He said, man, I have to go and get these right away. My dear wife is waiting for me. I need to do this quickly. So he starts to head towards the lake. And as he's heading towards the lake, from the other side, he can see these thousands of Rakshasas and Yakshas that are beginning to appear from the other side of the lake. And they're now coming towards him because they recognize that his intent was to really jump into the lake and, get some of these lotuses for himself. So then they come to him and they say, hey, who are you? And why are you coming here? You're not supposed to be here. And there's no way that you can take anything from this garden. You can't even touch even a single petal for that matter. This belongs to Lord Kuvera, and we've been given the responsibility of protecting them. So stay away. Not just stay away, but turn around and go back. What do you think the response was? Bhima, being Bhima, in all his Kshatriya spirit, especially after being inspired by Hanuman, and after having heard the Ramayana and having heard all of these, stories of valor and courage, he just turned against the Rakshasas and Yakshas that you won't believe it. He just, tossed them around, beat them up, crushed them, killed them. He just created so much havoc. And he was going around like as though he was a mad elephant, in a small garden, that kind of a thing. He was just going at them like crazy. And it just basically, there was so much fear even in the Rakshasas and the Yakshas for that matter. They couldn't escape the wrath of Bhima. And at one point, they knew that they just couldn't do anything. So they, fled from the scene. And that gave the opportunity for Bhima to jump right into the lake. And he started picking, as many lotuses as he could. And while he was reveling in that beautiful lake, these Rakshasas went straight to Lord Kuvera and said, we have Bhima here who's creating havoc. Can you please help us? Can you tell us what to do? This is what's happening. And he's trying to steal all your lotuses and, take as many of them back to Draupadi. So then Kuvera smiles. To their astonishment, Kuvera smiled and he said, I knew he was coming. So let him, and he's taking these flowers with all the best of intent for his dear wife, Draupadi, who's been through so much. So let him take as many as he wants. So with that, that pastime goes on. And meanwhile, let's get back to a little more about Jarasandha, right? As to who he was, right? And Jarasandha was a relative of Kamsa, like I said earlier, and he was so inimical towards Krishna. He just wanted to kill Krishna at any cost, and anything and anyone to do with Krishna also he wanted to get out of the way. He was, but at the same time, like I said, he was also a very austere kind of, or he performed several austerities, very severe austerities. And these austerities, he was a big devotee of Shiva. And he would perform this Mahabhairava Yajna. So Mahabhairava is Shiva himself, right? So he would perform these these penances and these yajnas. And as a sacrifice, what he would do was he would actually offer up the heads of the kings that he defeated in battle, right? So in every battle he would, engage in and conquer that particular kingdom. He would get the king of that kingdom and actually put them in captivity. And then during the yajna, he would offer their heads to Mahabhairava or Shiva. So this was the situation, and so the kings were in total terror. They were they were horrified, and obviously for their lives. And this was the kind of person that Jarasandha was. He was very, very, very ruthless, very callous, and terrifying by every context that you can think of. So that's the kind of person that he was. And now, so we're getting to a point where Jarasandha was such a formidable figure that when Arjuna and Krishna and Bhima they came up with this plan to kill him, there was a very, very good reason as to why they wanted to do that. They wanted to rid this earth of this terrible personality. Kamsa was bad enough, right? And this is another person that was also heading that direction. So they wanted to get Jarasandha out of the way. And so, disguising themselves as Brahmins, they were able to go and ask Jarasandha for some alms. And Jarasandha was the kind of person, like I said, he was also austere in many ways, and he would never refuse Brahmanas or Brahmins to from anything that they asked for. So when these three Brahmins appeared in front of him, he agreed to what they were asking for. They said, look, we don't need any money, we don't need any food, all we're asking for is fight with us. So then finally, the agreement was reached, and Jarasandha said, not you, not you, not you, but I will fight with Bhima. He seems to be the biggest, strongest guy. It'll be worthy of my stature. So Bhima and Jarasandha fight for several days, 12, 13 days, something like that. It was like continuously. And Bhima was getting completely disheartened that he was not able to overcome Jarasandha, right? And so at that point, Krishna gives that little hint and whispers in Bhima's ears and tells him, this is what you need to do. So Bhima basically gets him in the middle of his body and splits him into two. And that's how Jarasandha dies, right? He gives up his life. There's no way he can go any further from that. So that was the secret that Krishna shared with him. So without Krishna's help there, Bhima wouldn't have been, it would have gone on and on and on. And who knows what that outcome would have been like. So now we're getting to another interesting part where Bhima was a little puffed up after the Battle of Kurukshetra. He felt like, the Pandavas were so powerful, so powerful, so powerful that no matter how big and how strong the Kauravas were, they were not going to be able to win the war anyway, right? Even though they were like 4 times or 5 times the size of the army, compared to what the Pandavas had, still the Pandavas were invincible. And so Bhima was a little puffed up at one point in time. And in order to check in, Krishna arrived on the Garuda and took him down south, many miles down south, where there was a beautiful, beautiful lake. This lake was very white, very big. There was also a very big lake. And so Krishna took Bhima there and asked this puzzled Bhima, Bhima was wondering, why am I being brought here? What's happening? And then Krishna says, can you please tell me what the source of this lake is? Can you find out and let me know what the source of this lake is? So Bhima said, that's no big deal. I can do that in no time. And so he hops off of Garuda and then he runs to the lake and he looks around and, he starts to run along the periphery of the lake as well. And then he's not able to find the source of this lake. And then suddenly there are these powerful Rakshasas. I don't know what it is about Bhima and these Rakshasas, but yeah, these Rakshasas show up. And they start to charge at him and start fighting with him. And here Bhima is Kshatriya, so he takes out his sword and he's fighting. He takes out his mace and he's fighting with these Rakshasas. He's fighting and fighting and fighting to a point that he gets completely exhausted, almost faints, because he's not able to get the better of them. And he feels so powerless. He feels like, oh my God, it's me, Bhima, and I'm not able to take care of these Rakshasas. He feels really, 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 devastated at that point in time. So then Krishna, with a smiling face comes in and he just throws the lake away. He throws the lake away and he disperses the Rakshasas just with a wave of his hand. And he tells Bhima, do you know what the source of this lake is? I asked you to find the source of this lake. This lake, which is no small lake, it was a huge, big lake. This lake is actually a part of Kumbhakarna's skull. Kumbhakarna from the Ramayana episode, right? It was a part of his skull. And it was there that this lake survived. And those demons that you were fighting, these demons are none other than Ravana's warriors. And if you think this lake, first of all, is in the skull of Kumbhakarna, which meant that Kumbhakarna was of a size that we can't even imagine. I mean, huge, humongous monster, right? And then the Rakshasas, these demons, were actually warriors in Ravana's army. And you couldn't even defeat these guys. You call yourself Bhima, you call yourself, the ultimate Kshatriya, you're a Pandava and all this might. Hey, but you couldn't even take care of these demons. What to speak, right? So basically Krishna smashed his ego at that point, his pride at that time, and let him know, look, you're just Bhima. Okay, there's a much, much bigger, there's so much bigger than you, there's so much, that is bigger than you. And I'm the source. I'm the one who's able to give. In fact, some of the verses that we've been reading over the last few days is basically demonstrating, the fact that Krishna is the ultimate. He's not only the ultimate protector, but he's the ultimate source for everything that we have. Even the littlest things that we do, we tend to get puffed up. So you can imagine Bhima, obviously being the Bhima that he was and being the Pandava and the Kshatriya that he was, we can at least relate to that and say, man, he could say that, yeah, I'm very powerful, I'm invincible. But that is also the wrong intent, right? For us especially, this is a good takeaway for us, because the littlest of the things that we do, we get puffed up. We seldom remember Krishna. And for devotees, remembering Krishna happens a lot more than non-devotees, right? So when something goes well, we're very quick to take all of the credit and say, I did it. We're in the center, right? That happens very naturally, very easily for us, for most of us. But the moment something goes wrong, for devotees, we're immediately thinking, Krishna, please help, right? But for the non-devotees, that also doesn't happen. Even the thought doesn't come to them. When everything goes well, it's them. It's all about them. When things go wrong, they're quick to blame it on somebody. And, when they're going through a lot of distress, they suffer. But they're not, even the thought doesn't come to them that, Krishna could help, Krishna is the source, Krishna should be the center. None of that happens. So the important takeaway here is that Krishna is the source. Nothing happens without his sanction. So we should always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, right? In everything that we're doing, in everything that's happening to us, everything that's happening around us, nothing happens without the sanction of Krishna. There's no such thing as chance. All these great PhDs in math, as much as most of us are all trained in the sciences, in the theory of probability, right? There's nothing like chance. We are only trying to find mathematical models that we can relate to so that it's a little easier for our tiny little bird brains that we have. But there is so much more that we don't know. We're just scratching the surface, and the only thing that we can scratch the surface by is creating some of these models that we can explain, the laws of physics or the laws of math. I mean, the mathematical models that we have and theories of probability that we can come up with and say, oh, there's a 55% that this can happen and that can happen, and so that we have some sense of security. But that's a sense of false security, right? Or rather, a false sense of security. What we're learning through the Bhagavatam and what we're learning through the scriptures is that Krishna is the ultimate source. Nothing happens by chance. And Krishna is the ultimate protector. So even if we hurt ourselves or we fall sick, there are several different reasons that can be the cause for that, which ultimately he is Sarva Karana Karana. He is the cause of all causes, right? But at the same time, he is also Suhardam Sarva Bhutanam. So he is our protector. He's the ultimate benefactor. He is taking care of us. So if we were to lose an arm or lose a limb, instead we get away with a scratch. And that's because Krishna is protecting his devotees. And even if we lose our lives for that matter, Krishna is protecting us. He is giving us a better life or a better chance to get closer to him or to take us back to Godhead. So we should always remain in that faith, in that spirit, in that mood, that Krishna is our ultimate protector. There is nothing to be worried of. In the worst of the worst circumstances, stay away from any thoughts which take us away from Krishna, but rather use that as a benediction that we're getting from our preceptors, from Krishna. It's a descending mercy that we're receiving that should bring us even closer to Krishna. In good times, in bad times, in all times, get closer to Krishna, and that's where we should be. That's our constitutional position, to be able to serve Guru and Krishna in every possible way we can with an open heart. So I have 2 minutes left. I'm so sorry. I should have given you more time so that we could have a little discussion. But maybe perhaps we have time for a couple of questions, and let me try and answer some of those. So I can stop at this point. I know this was storytelling. I hope it was okay on a Sunday morning. But these are some of the glories that was new to me as well when I was doing some of this research and learning about Bhima. We all hear about Bhima fighting in the battlefield. Of course, that is very, very well known. But some of these little known things, his tender side of having that affection and displaying that affection for his wife, Draupadi, is something that I hadn't come across. And this was very interesting. I thought I'd share this with you. So with that, any questions, any discussion, any comments, any feedback, please feel free to share. I hope I didn't put all of you to sleep.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
please accept my humble obeisances. This is all glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept.
Very nice story. Very nice story, Prabhuji, in a lot of detail, which I didn't know. So thanks for enlightening us. It's not a question, but just an observation. When Lord Hanuman offered Bhima to fight the Pandavas, fight the Kauravas, and then Hanuman was asked to be, just in a sense, on the chariot. So that must have been very hard, given Hanuman's nature was to crush the evil, crush the demons, and then to hold back must have been very hard. So that's just a thought from my side, Prabhuji. Hare
Very
Krishna.
true, Prabhu. Very true. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so true, because Hanuman being Hanuman also, we hear of his glories. Even as a child, he was trying to, go grab the sun, thinking it was a ball, right? So he was always there to do all of this, out of his will. But his intent and his humility is something that is also highlighted, right? Even during the Ramayana, he could have done this very well. Like he tells Bhima that I could have very easily have, killed all of Ravana's army and killed Ravana himself. But no, I didn't do that, because the Lord, he was serving the Lord, and Lord Ram's specific instructions were to find Sita. And then even, by doing what he did, he was able to help Lord Ram establish his authority as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? As the incarnation. So that humility is something that, in spite of having all that capability and that might, was very, very important. And that again is a lesson for all of us, that, we may have all of these various capabilities, capacities to do things, but we also need to remember that, we have a purpose in life, that we're all, that we're given certain gifts by Krishna, that we should be using these gifts only, in that service, whether it is the gift of singing or gift of making some lovely prasadam, whatever it is, right? So things that we have, the gifts that we have, we should be using it with that sense of humility in the service. And that's basically what Hanuman is demonstrating for us as well, as an example. So thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I mean, whenever you speak on these verses, I mean, a lot of details from Mahabharata. Because I might have heard some of these past times earlier, different in a bits and pieces, but yeah, the way you connect them, I mean, when you tell the complete thing, so that was like more. I mean, because I didn't know about the complete sequence. I mean, don't remember. So, but yeah, it was very nice to hear that, Prabhu. It was very nice.
Thank you, Langaraj Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Which book you read, Prabhu, for Mahabharata?
So a few sources, but my main source is actually the Mahabharata by Krishna Dharma's.
Krishna Dharma Prabhu.
Yes, that's phenomenal. It's very interesting for me, because I can almost see that happening. A lot of these details are also there in the Bhagavatam, but to be told in a story form in a way that, simple. I mean, less intelligent people like me can find it a little more attractive and engaging for me to be able to actually see it like almost like a movie, right? So it's happening.
But when you are explaining, also you are explaining like that, like in front of it is happening.
I try to, but I'll tell you, you should read the book. I mean, it's so exciting. Every page is so exciting, filled with so much more detail than I'm probably just scratching the surface.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All close to Guru Maharaj Prabhupada. I like to join Savisachi Prabhu and Lingaraj Prabhu. You are the best storyteller award. Great. I mean, it's like a motion picture you speak. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Some questions? Any questions? A minute or two we can spend, and then we can close.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhuji, the storytelling that you did, it took me back to my younger days when, Chandamama used to be the source, then came Balamitra and Bujai. But all these things, the stories that they were writing in those days, I think were also taken from Bhagavatam or Adhyatma Ramayana or whatever, but from the scripture sources. And they sound so near to what you're narrating from Krishna Dharma's, Mahabharata book. So, it takes me right back to those days when these stories, vividly, in those days, that is what we had. Chandamama was one, then Vittalachari was the other one. It's like one is imagination, the other. Yeah. So just wanted to share that.
Yes. You won't believe it, but as I was reading up, I was even reading some children's stories as well. There's some authors after Amachitrakatha who have been still writing, and some of these stories are so nice. Even though they're for children, they're for bigger children like me. So it's exciting, still as exciting and still as fresh as, like you said, when we were kids, reading these comics and reading these stories. So very, very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing the research, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare.
Some questions? Okay. If not, we can close. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Father's Day. And tomorrow is Nirjal Ekadasi. So make the most of it. Wish you all the very best. Have a blessed week coming in front of us, ahead of us. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.